The billionaire CEO single for 30 years, but falls in love at first sight with a humble black waitress. He built a billion-dollar empire, yet couldn't build a connection. 30 years of empty boardrooms, hollow applause, and lonely toasts. Then she walked in, graceful, humble, and carrying 2 glasses of wine. One look and everything in him shifted. Have you ever felt a connection so instant it scared you? Let us know in the comments below. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell me where you are watching from in time. Subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss future video uploads. Thank you. Now back to the story. The clink of crystal and the low murmur of conversation danced like soft jazz through the lavish dining hall of Langston's Table, a 5-star restaurant nestled in the heart of Chicago's Gold Coast. The world outside buzzed with summer rain and taxis, but inside, time seemed to pause with every plate served and every fine wine poured. At a private table near the window sat Graham Ellison, 51, poised and polished, the kind of man whose mere presence could silence a room. His tailored navy suit hugged his broad frame, his salt and pepper hair slicked back with the kind of precision that only came with a personal stylist and a life of rigid control. He swirled the golden liquid in his wine glass, watching it catch the light but barely tasting it. The board meeting that brought him back to Chicago from New York had ended 3 hours ago, but his mind wasn't on the quarterly projections. Not really. It hadn't been, not for a long time. Graham had built Ellison Innovations from scratch, a tech titan whose smart devices were in half the households in America. He was powerful, envied, and devastatingly alone. 30 years had passed since he last truly let someone in. His success had devoured time, aged him without mercy, and left behind walls even money couldn't break down. Mr. Ellison, a voice cut through the hum. He looked up, and the moment stretched. She stood before him like a living contradiction to everything in his world. Warmth in a room full of cold rituals. Her name tag read Ariel, but he didn't need a name to notice her. She had the kind of presence that didn't shout, but whispered something undeniable. Her skin was deep bronze, glowing against the golden light of the chandelier. Her short, natural hair was pulled back elegantly, and her uniform, a bold yellow blazer with white trim, fit her like it had been made just for her. In her hand were 2 glasses of Sauvignon Blanc, one of which she gently placed before him. "Your wine, sir," she said, her voice low, rich, and steady. Their eyes met. For just a second. But something clicked. Something neither of them could quite name. "Thank you," Graham said, slower than usual. "You're welcome," Ariel replied with a soft smile, before turning to tend to another table. He watched her leave, but not in the way a man watches beauty. He watched like a man who had been asleep for 30 years, and just opened his eyes. Ariel Green, 29, had worked double shifts at Langston's Table for the last 6 months. She didn't mind. Her mother's medical bills didn't wait, and neither did life. Born and raised on the south side of Chicago, Ariel knew hustle like she knew her heartbeat. Kindness was her compass, and dignity her armor. She hadn't recognized Graham when she walked up to him. Just another suited guest with the kind of cool detachment money often brought. But the way he looked at her, that wasn't detachment. It was something else. She felt his gaze even as she walked away. Not like a man watching a woman, but like a man noticing someone for the first time in a long, long while. Later that evening, after the dinner crowd had thinned, Graham lingered. Unusual for him. Normally he was the first out the door, back to emails and empty penthouses. But not tonight. He asked for dessert, then coffee. It was nearly closing when Ariel brought the final check to his table. "I hope everything was to your satisfaction," she said, her tone polite. He hesitated. Something about her steadiness made him feel off balance. "It was more than that," he said, reaching for his card. "Thank you." "Of course," she said, offering a small bow of her head. But as she turned to go again, he asked, impulsively, stupidly, humanly, Do you like working here?" She turned back, brow slightly lifted. "I like taking care of people," she said honestly. "This job lets me do that." He nodded slowly. She smiled once more and walked away. That night, Graham Ellison didn't go back to his penthouse. He drove along Lake Shore Drive until the sun began to rise, the question on repeat in his head. Why her? Why now? Have you ever locked eyes with someone and just known something was different? What do you think Graham is feeling right now? Let us know below. The next morning, the city stirred with its usual blend of chaos and beauty. Honking horns, bakery scents wafting from old brick shops, and the skyline standing tall like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. But in one luxury high-rise, Graham Ellison stood still. He hadn't slept. Not because of reports or investments, but because of a smile. Her smile. Her name was printed on the receipt still lying on his kitchen counter. Ariel Green. He wasn't a man who dwelled. His success was built on rapid decisions and swift execution. But this wasn't business. This was instinct. And instincts could be dangerous. Still, by noon, Graham found himself back at Langston's table. Dressed down this time. Dark jeans, a crisp white shirt rolled up at the sleeves, and no assistant in sight. He told himself it was for the tiramisu. But the hostess knew better. "Back so soon, Mr. Ellison?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Food was exceptional," he said, his gaze scanning for yellow and white. Ariel appeared moments later. She stopped mid-step when she saw him at the same table. "You again," she said, trying to stifle a laugh. "You remember me," he replied, amused by her ease. "Well, you did leave a $500 tip on a $92 meal, so yeah, kinda hard to forget," she teased. He chuckled, a real sound, unfamiliar even to his own ears. "I wanted to ask something," he said, suddenly serious. She tilted her head. "Can I take you out to lunch? Somewhere that doesn't require you to wear a name tag." Her smile faltered, just slightly. Not because she wasn't flattered, but because she wasn't naive. "You're a guest. I'm a waitress. You really want to blur that line." "I don't see a line," he said gently. "Just two people who might enjoy a conversation." She studied him for a long beat. Then, to his surprise, she sat down. Not on a date. Not outside the restaurant. But right there. At the edge of his table. "You want conversation?" she asked. "Okay. Let's talk." Ariel never expected kindness from strangers, much less from powerful ones. Her life had taught her to expect nothing and work for everything. Her mother, a former schoolteacher turned stroke survivor, had taught her grace. Her neighborhood taught her grit. And her past relationship, that taught her never to confuse charm with love. But Graham, he looked at her like she was the only person in the room. And not in a flirtatious, predatory way. It was quieter than that. Deeper. So she sat. Just for a minute. Just to see if he meant it. They talked for nearly 40 minutes. About her mother's peach cobbler. About his childhood in Pennsylvania. About books they both loved. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho surprised them both. He didn't mention his net worth. She didn't mention her second job. He talked like he'd been starved for real conversation. She listened like she hadn't been heard in years. As she rose to return to her duties, Graham stood too. "I know it's not typical," he said, voice sincere. "But I'd really like to see you again. Outside of work." Ariel bit her lip, uncertainty dancing in her eyes. She'd heard every line from every kind of man, but nothing about him felt rehearsed. Still, reality called. "Leave your number," she said. "If I'm interested, I'll use it." Back in his sleek office the next day, Graham stared at his phone. No message. No missed call. He told himself not to obsess. But then he caught himself scrolling through the restaurant's online reviews like a teenager with a crush. His assistant, Chloe, leaned against the glass door. "You look like a man waiting on something other than a quarterly report." Graham smirked. "I might be. Finally acting your age," she teased. "Maybe," he replied, eyes back on the phone. Ariel sat on the worn couch of her two-bedroom apartment, next to her mother, who dozed off mid-movie. She glanced at the slip of paper in her hand. Graham Ellison. She Googled him. And then, her jaw nearly dropped. $9.7 billion. Tech empire. Divorced. No kids. No scandals. "What do you want with someone like me?" she whispered to no one. But she texted him anyway. "Tomorrow. 3 p.m. Hyde Park Bookstore Cafe. Don't be late." He arrived early. She arrived earlier. He bought her tea. She ordered for herself. They walked the aisles of second-hand books, talked about poetry and soul food. She made him laugh with a dead-on impersonation of uptight customers. He shared a story about how he once burned ramen in college. There was no kiss, no touch, just energy. Warm, magnetic, unspoken. They both left different than they'd arrived. In the quiet of his car, Graham whispered to himself, "I think I just met the first person who doesn't want anything from me." In the quiet of her apartment, Ariel murmured, "I think I just met the first man who sees me." Do you think love at first sight is real? Or do you believe love is something that must be built over time? Drop your thoughts below, we want to hear your take. If you have watched this video up to this point, help support the channel Cinderella's Fortune by subscribing. Your support helps us share more beautiful stories like. Thank you. Now back to the story. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of text messages that started with morning greetings and ended with late-night quotes. 2 weeks of unannounced bookstore visits, slow walks through the Garfield Park Conservatory, and deep conversations over Ariel's homemade peach muffins. But 2 weeks was all it took for the cracks in their worlds to show. They were sitting in Ariel's kitchen on a rainy Thursday night. She wore a hoodie and no makeup. He wore slacks and a designer pullover. They looked mismatched, but it worked, until his phone buzzed. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. She raised a brow. "You should check that. Might be your billion-dollar empire crumbling." He smiled, pulled out the phone and sighed. "It's Chloe," he said. "We've got an investor dinner tomorrow." "I forgot." "You're always forgetting the world you come from," Ariel said, teasing, but something in her voice lingered longer than humor. He noticed. "What does that mean?" She got up, rinsed her tea mug. "Nothing. Ariel. It means your world doesn't make room for mine," she said, turning to face him now. "You disappear into meetings, into first-class flights, and when you come back, it's like I don't exist in that part of your life." Graham stood. "I'm trying. I've never done this before. Not like this." "I know," she said quietly. "And I'm not mad. I'm just scared. Because I've done this before. And I know how easily men leave when things get inconvenient." He stepped closer. "You're not inconvenient." Her eyes locked on his. "Then prove it." 3 years ago, she dated a man named Terrence. He was charming, successful, and affectionate, until her mom's stroke. Until the hospital bills came. Until her schedule revolved around caregiving. He called her too much. She never forgot the sting of that. So now, with Graham, she was cautious. Hopeful. But cautious. Later that night, Graham sat in his penthouse office, surrounded by awards, glass, and silence. He replayed her words. Then prove it. But how? He was raised to believe love was private, not performative. His parents were the cold type. Measured hugs, polite dinners. And every relationship he'd ever attempted had fizzled under the weight of his success. She was different. But he didn't know how to be different. The next evening, Graham stood at the rooftop investor dinner, wine glass in hand, listening to hedge fund managers drone on about forecasts. His eyes flicked to the crowd. She wasn't here. Of course not. She didn't belong here. Or did she? That same night, Ariel cleaned her mom's dishes in silence, her hands moving out of habit. Her phone sat untouched on the counter. Her mother's voice broke the stillness. You like him, don't you? Ariel looked over. What? You talk about him like he's real, her mother said. Not like a fantasy. Like a person. That matters. I do like him, Ariel admitted. Then let him know what matters to you. The next day, they met at a lakeside cafe. I want to be seen, Ariel said, her voice soft but firm. Not just privately. I want to exist in your world, not just around it. Graham looked up from his coffee. I didn't realize I was hiding you. You're not, she said. But you're not inviting me in either. A long pause. I'll do better, he said. Start by letting me in, she replied. The next weekend, Graham invited her to a charity gala. Not as staff. Not in the background. As his date. She wore an emerald green dress that shimmered like a forest at dawn. He held her hand like she was made of something rare. They walked into the room and every head turned. Not because of her dress. Not because of his status. But because together they radiated something magnetic. But not everyone was pleased. His board chairman, a man in his late 60s named Richard Langmore, pulled him aside halfway through the evening. You're entitled to your personal life, Graham, Richard said, sipping bourbon. But just be aware, optics matter. Investors talk. And this might become a distraction. Graham's jaw tightened. Then let them talk. But inside, a storm brewed. The next morning, Ariel found a note Graham had written and slipped into her clutch at the gala. You're not a risk. You're the first real thing I've had in decades. And I won't run. Not this time. She reread it 3 times. Then she cried. Not because she was hurt. Because she was finally seen. If you were in Ariel's shoes, would you trust Graham? Or would his lifestyle scare you away? Tell us in the comments. Your opinion might surprise someone else. The morning after the gala, the city of Chicago woke up to something it hadn't seen in a long time. Graham Ellison trending. But this time, it wasn't about a new device, a landmark acquisition, or a Forbes cover. It was a photo. A grainy shot, taken on a smartphone, of Graham and Ariel walking into the gala hand in hand. The caption read, Tech Titan steps out with mystery woman. Is this the billionaire's secret girlfriend? The comments weren't kind. Some asked who she was. Others speculated she was after his money. A few pointed out the contrast in their appearance, their race, their social status. And by noon, the media frenzy had a name. The Waitress and the Wealth. Chloe slammed a printed article down on his desk. You knew this was coming. I warned you. Graham didn't flinch. And they're digging into her past. Into her mother's health records. Even her high school GPA is circulating. This isn't just gossip anymore. This is war. He stood slowly. Then I guess I'll fight. You don't get to fight with billions of dollars and a press team, she said. She doesn't have any of that. She's vulnerable. And right now, she's exposed. Ariel's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from strangers. Social media tags she never asked for. Even reporters outside her building. And then the hardest part. Her mother watching it unfold on the news. Baby, her mom said gently, maybe it's time you stepped away from this. Ariel shook her head. Why should I be the one to hide? But her voice cracked. And her eyes stung. Because the truth was, the love she'd slowly started to believe in, the thing she dared to hope for, was now being weaponized. She didn't want a stage. She just wanted a chance. That night, Graham did something he hadn't done in years. He canceled a press conference. He called Ariel instead. I'm sorry, he said the second she answered. I should have protected you. You can't control the world, Graham, she said. You can only control how you show up in it. Silence. I'm with you, he said. But I'll understand if you need space. She didn't answer. Then the line went dead. For 3 days there was silence. Ariel didn't text. Graham didn't push. He wanted to. But every time he started typing, the words sounded hollow. And then, on the 4th night, he found himself at the steps of her building. She opened the door. She didn't look surprised. Just tired. You came. I would have crawled, he said. She stepped aside. He entered. And for the next hour, they sat on the floor of her tiny living room, wrapped in a blanket of silence and candlelight, saying everything with their presence instead of their words. Finally, Ariel spoke. I don't want your world, Graham. I don't want limos or Forbes or charity galas. I know, he said. I just want to be loved. Loudly. Fearlessly. Honestly. He turned to her, cupping her face in his hands. Then let me do that. Starting now. Starting always. And he kissed her. Not like a billionaire. Not like a man with power. But like a man who had finally found something he'd spent his whole life pretending he didn't need. 2 weeks later, Graham did something no one expected. At the company's annual shareholder meeting, a televised event, he stood on stage and deviated from the script. I've been asked to address recent speculation about my personal life. So here it is, I'm in love. Her name is Ariel Green. She is strong, brilliant, kind, and everything I never knew I needed. And if anyone has a problem with that, feel free to sell your shares. The room fell into stunned silence. Then, slowly, a few claps. Then more. Until even Richard Langmore gave a reluctant nod. The next day, Ariel watched the clip on her cracked phone screen. And for the first time in her life, someone stood for her before the world. Not out of guilt. Not out of obligation. But out of love. She whispered to her mom, he did it. Her mom smiled. Told you he wasn't like the rest. Their love didn't fix everything. Her mom still needed care. His company still demanded time. But slowly they began to build something real. Something balanced. She helped him remember his humanity. He helped her rediscover her worth. They weren't perfect. But they were present. A soft autumn wind rustled through Lincoln Park, scattering golden leaves along the cobblestone path. Ariel walked slowly, her hand intertwined with Graham's, the warmth between them a quiet resistance against the early chill. It had been 6 months since the night he knocked on her door. 6 months since the world questioned her worth, and he silenced it with truth. And now they moved through life not as a story, not as a scandal, but as a couple that had weathered something. Ariel now worked part-time at a non-profit women's center on the South Side, helping young girls dream bigger, speak louder. Graham had made a donation anonymously, but Ariel turned it down. I want them to earn what they build, she said. Just like I did. He smiled. That's why I love you. His company, Ellison Innovations, had restructured. More equity for staff. More flexible leadership. Less him. He didn't need control anymore. He had peace. It wasn't dramatic. There were no violins, no hot air balloons. Just one Sunday morning, barefoot in Ariel's kitchen, while flipping pancakes, Graham turned to her with flour on his shirt and vulnerability in his eyes. Marry me. Ariel blinked. Spatula midair. What? No speech. No speechwriters. Just, I want this. Every day. With you. She stared at him. Even if we live here forever. Even if we have to take care of my mom forever. Even if it means no galas and half-price wine and... Yes, he said. To all of it. She didn't cry. She laughed. A full, radiant laugh. Then she kissed him like the world had just been rewritten. Because it had. They didn't invite the media. They didn't serve filet mignon or rent a vineyard. Instead, they exchanged vows in her grandmother's backyard, under the willow tree, with 40 guests, folding chairs, and a playlist of Aretha Franklin, Sam Cooke, and Ray Charles. Ariel wore ivory lace. Graham wore a navy blue suit and tear-streaked cheeks. I waited 30 years for this, he whispered at the altar. And I'd wait 30 more if it meant finding you again. Graham's company was thriving under new leadership. He was no longer CEO by choice. Ariel was launching a literacy program across underfunded schools in Chicago. Her mother had moved into a cozy home they bought together. Her health was stable, her laughter frequent, and on a quiet morning in their sunlit living room, Graham felt a tiny kick against his hand. Ariel placed her hand on her small, round belly. She's strong, she said. She's you, he whispered. Later that night, Graham sat on the porch, watching the stars with a blanket over his shoulders. Ariel came out with 2 cups of tea. You still think about the man you were? She asked. Sometimes, he said. But I don't miss him. Why not? Because he had everything. Except joy. And I never knew what that was until I met you. She leaned her head on his shoulder. They sat in silence. The kind of silence that only belongs to people who finally feel home. Have you ever waited for something for so long, you stopped believing it would come? Until it did? Let us know in the comments. Your story might inspire someone who's still waiting.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more